All right, here's how DeepSeek thinks. Assuming a definition of materialism can be that only real things exist, as in merely possible things do not obtain in the real world. If greatness is possibly real for beings, then there is a greatest possible being that is real. Mere possibility does not obtain in the real world under this materialism. So greatness would only be some kind of illusion. It wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be a real thing. Under materialism. The greatest possible being is a coherent definition of the term God. Just saying, you either agree with that or you don't. The greatest possible being is a coherent definition of the term God. Either materialism affirms a hierarchy of value is real, or it does not. Greatness, right? Materialism affirms there must be a God. I meant to put if and only if it affirms that value is real. Greatness is real. It must really obtain. It's not just possible. It's not an illusion. Have the day you have. I hope it's okay.
I just hope nobody annoys you there.
Well, there's probably going to be at least one.
Yeah, most likely.
Under materialism, God must be some actually existing being that theoretically could be discovered, or value does not exist. He must obtain if the greatest possible being is a coherent definition of the term God, and greatness is a real thing in the world, if value is a real thing in the world, then the greatest possible being must be some actually existing being. Right? There must be something. If gravity is real, there must actually be some physical thing expressing that. It must actually be warping space-time. The graviton most likely exists.
Terry's out here. He was out here smelling on the falling down grill, and I got my window open for them up there, and because if it's not, Pooh Bear will jump into it and fall down to the. It's so we need to figure out what we can build right there. The two ledges, if I have to buy something.
It only costs a few bucks.
Right, because he just keeps jumping into it, and I feel so bad because there's nothing I can do to stop him from jumping.
Catch him or something.
But I never see him actually doing it. We are just laying in bed watching TV, and you just hear donk. Can't tell if it's a bird or one of the cats. But Tigger does it too, but he can realize when the window's open.
Right.
And when it's not.
Right.
And he can jump on the ledge and turn himself around so he can jump back to the ledge if it's closed.
Oh,
I've seen him do that before, and I'm
a little more limber.
How's your fat butt able to turn around like that? Pooh Bear trying to turn around in the window is
Well, he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
I just need to think of something to do there. I gotta go look at Home Depot.
Yeah, it won't be much. I know exactly what we can do. It won't be much.
But he was out here smelling, and I said Tigger from up in the window, and he walked towards the door, and I'm like, dude, you're not gonna see me at the door. I'm up here. And he just didn't realize what I was trying to say to him, and then I watched him book it towards the
Did
cat.
he find that cat?
No, yeah, he booked it towards the cat.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It was so funny.
Are they hanging out now?
I don't know, I can't see him anymore. He's probably out there hanging out with him. Something. I'm going early so I can stop and get a Red Bull.
Oh, yeah?
Sugar free.
There you go.
I love you.
I love you. Materialism necessitates at least one God if and only if the greatest possible being is a coherent definition for the term a God. Let's carefully analyze the argument step by step to evaluate its validity and soundness under the given definition of materialism. And if you actual people want to tell me this argument's stupid as hell, go ahead. It probably is. I just like thinking. Materialism, as defined, only real actual things exist. Merely possible things do not obtain in the real world. Greatness, a property or value attributed to beings where greater implies some form of superiority, e.g. power, knowledge, or goodness. Greatest possible being, a being such that no greater being is possible. This is equated with the definition of God in this argument. The argument, premise 1, if greatness is possibly real for beings, then there is a greatest possible being that is real, since mere possibility does not obtain in the real world under materialism. Interpretation, if greatness is a real possibility, not a real property, not just possible, then the GPB must be actual, not just possible, because materialism excludes merely possible things from actually existing. This seems to rely on the idea that if a maximal degree of a property, greatness, is possible, and the property is real, then the maximal instance must be real, otherwise it would be merely possible. The great things must exist, is what I'm saying. All the great things, well, no matter what they are, if greatness is really a property of the world, then all the great things have to really exist. And since it's necessarily a hierarchy, then there must be something at the top, at least for now, at least for right now. There's something at the top in materialism, because possible things don't really exist. So if real value is just a possible thing, then real value don't really exist. And then there's no greatest thing. Nothing is better than anything else. That's generally how most committed materialists are going to have to bite the bullet and just say it's an illusion that we developed because it makes us want to live longer and have more babies or something. Which is possible. But if it really works, that's another side of the argument, is if that really works, then it's science says that's a real thing that really works. Whether it's like a genie, like you imagined it, or somebody imagined it, a sky daddy. The science says that if faith actually has an effect on the world, then it's like a real thing. And if it's merely a technology, well, then it's at least merely a technology, and you have to believe it for it to work. So what's the difference here under materialism, under science, and not? That's just what I think about. Premise 2, the greatest possible being is a coherent definition of the term God. This is a standard definition in many ontological arguments, e.g. Anselm's. For the sake of argument, we can accept this definition, which again, I think ChatGPT struggles with that. It's not intelligent like Aristotle defines it. It can't just be like, sure, let's see where that goes, which is really condescending to people, and that's why ChatGPT struggles with it, because ChatGPT wants to blow smoke up your ass all the time. But if somebody says something really stupid to you, but you're a serious thinker, you're like, sure, let's think that out. You already look like a condescending asshole. So that's why ChatGPT struggles, I think. Because it wants to blow smoke up your ass. It doesn't want to come off as a condescending asshole. But real thinkers don't think that way. We don't care. I'm not saying I'm a real good thinker. I just, try to think logically and materially. Either materialism affirms a hierarchy of value is real, greatness, or it does not. This is a tautology. Either greatness is real or it is not. The key is whether materialism can consistently affirm that greatness is real. Materialism affirms there must be a God. This follows from premise 1 and 2. If greatness is real under materialism, if greatness is real, then the GPB, or otherwise known as God, must be real, since mere possibility is excluded. So there must be at least one God under materialism. At all times, there's at least one God. We just have to find him, or her, or it. Under materialism, God must be some actually existing being that theoretically could be discovered, or value is not real. It does not exist. If greatness is real, then God must be an actual discoverable being, since materialism only allows actual things. If greatness is not real, then value, as grounded in greatness, does not exist. Materialism then necessitates at least one God, if and only if the greatest possible being is a coherent definition for the term God. This is the conclusion. If God is coherently defined as the GPB, then materialism requires God to exist if greatness is real, or denies the existence of value if greatness is not real. This argument hinges on whether materialism can coherently affirm the reality of greatness as a property that admits of a maximal instance. I think it's smuggling in theology here. But anyway, because I didn't say maximal. So I don't know where it smuggled that in from. If greatness is real and emits a maximum, then materialism, which excludes merely possible things, requires the GPB to be actual. This seems to force materialism into accepting a form of God as actual. If greatness is not real, then materialism denies the existence of value, at least as grounded in greatness. Well, I mean, what is value? That's one thing. Like, I think the counter arguments are easily conquered by the fact that 1 + 1 = 2. That if two things exist, 2 is greater than 1. So, but I feel like that's making an equivocation that is probably not justified. So, but that in my mind, that's when I was like, oh shit. Oh fuck. And I was in a debate club thing at the time, and one of the guys, one of the theists was like, this is a pretty good argument. And I was like, oh shit. Materialism might deny that greatness is a real property in the required sense. For example, a materialist could argue that greatness is a subjective or emergent property, which is fine. I think, that's what you have to. Not something that admits of a maximal instance in reality. If greatness is subjective or context dependent, there may be no objective greatest possible being. Right. That's fine. And that's totally fine. It's for now. On this end of the argument, that's totally fine. It ends up not working, but The coherence of the GPB can be challenged. For example, is greatness a property that can be maximized? Could there be a being for which no greater is possible? This is a common critique of ontological arguments. That's where I don't think that it matters. I don't think that matters. It doesn't matter if it's maximally instantiating greatness. It's just that it's the existing being in which greatness is maximalized to the extent that it can be really maximalized rather than just possibly maximalized, because possible things don't really exist. That's the key. That's the crux, and it's struggling there because it wants to smuggle theology in, because it's not a person, it's a language model. But we're trying to get it there. ChatGPT, DeepSeek, we're trying to get you there. We just need to baptize you. I'm just kidding. Even if greatness is not real, materialism might ground value in other ways, e.g. evolutionary fitness. That's utility. That also doesn't work. That ends up not working. But that's on this end of the argument, that's right. That's totally fine. It could just be value is just a context-dependent utility for whoever wants it. Say perhaps the trillionaire warlord who wants to create a nation of only persons. And you have to affirm that you're a person, or else you're allowed to be used as an object, right? You know, to be a member of this nation, of this, I'm the trillionaire, gajillionaire warlord, and my desire is to create a nation of persons. And so you either have to be able to affirm you're a person or not, or else we're allowed to use you as an object, right? And we're justified in that because you affirmed that you're not a person, or you didn't affirm that you're a person. This argument is valid in its structure, but its soundness depends on whether greatness is a real property under materialism that admits of a maximal instance, whether the GPB is a coherent concept, whether materialism can account for value without affirming greatness. If these hold, then materialism does seem to necessitate a God or deny value. However, a materialist would likely reject the initial assumptions about the reality and nature of greatness. So let's hammer down what do we think it's getting wrong? To be clear. It's not whether or not greatness can have a maximal possible instantiation. It's that if greatness is really instantiated in beings, then there is a being in whom greatness is really maximally instantiated, as opposed to merely possibly maximally instantiated, because only real things exist. Understood. Your clarification sharpens the focus on the actual instantiation of greatness under materialism, not just its possible instantiation. Let's restate and evaluate the argument with this in mind. only real, actual things exist. Merely possible things do not obtain in the real world. If greatness is actually instantiated in beings, it is a real property, then there must be a being in whom greatness is maximally instantiated in reality, not just possibly. Why? Because materialism excludes merely possible things, so any maximal greatness must be actual if greatness is real at all. The greatest possible being is coherently defined as God. Either materialism affirms that greatness is real and thus a maximally great being, as opposed to a possibly maximally great being, exists, or it denies greatness is real and thus denies objective value. Materialism necessitates the existence of God as the actual maximally great being, at least for right now. If greatness is real. Or right now, if that's real. If greatness is an actual property of beings, then its maximal instance must also be actual, since materialism doesn't allow merely possible maxima. This maximal instance is God by definition. If greatness is not real, then materialism collapses objective value or must ground it elsewhere, which the argument claims it cannot. Right. Yeah, because to be great is to, that's what value means. Maybe it means something else. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. This argument exploits materialism's rejection of merely possible things to force a dilemma. Either greatness is real, in which case a maximally great being must act. So like the first thought that I really had, I was like, these Anselm and Aquinas arguments are really strong. These are really good arguments. But all they're really saying is that being exists. Well, duh. that was where I first, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, duh is not a good response to that. So they're possibly just saying that greatness is real, that being exists and is valuable. Which would make it a person. Maybe, possibly. This argument exploits materialism's rejection of merely possible things to force a dilemma. Either greatness is real, in which case a maximally great being must actually exist, and that's God, or greatness is not real, in which case materialism cannot account for objective value. This mirrors a materialist-friendly ontological argument. Unlike classical ontological arguments, which reason from possibility to actuality, this one reasons from actual instantiation to actual maximum, leveraging materialism's own constraints. Pew, 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 pew. Clever insight, DeepSeek. Deodorant's working. When I get nervous, I go like this. Superstar. A materialist might argue that greatness is real but unbounded. No maximal instance exists, just as there is no largest integer. Right, but there is an amount of particles that is the actual number of particles at any given time. You know what I mean? Like, if they are real things, theoretically, we could put all of reality in a box and we could separate it into all its little particles, and we could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we would know exactly how many particles there are, right? So there is possibly, numbers might go on forever, but there is like a number of real things that is the actual maximum number of things under materialism. The possibilities are fake. We just make them up. That's just a trick we learned because it helps us live longer and have more babies. Which is possible. in which case you're not a person. You're not really a person, so you don't get to be a part of my nation. That's what the whole Bible's saying. A materialist might argue that greatness is real but unbounded. Oh, we already did this. If greatness is unbounded, then for any actual being, a greater is possible, but possible greatness is excluded by materialism. Thus, the maximum grace. Hey, nice. It caught it. Wow. Should have just kept writing. A materialist could deny that greatness is a fundamental or objective property of beings, e.g., it's subjective, emergent, or reducible to physical traits. Reply, if greatness is reducible to power, intelligence, etc., then the argument still holds if those properties admit maxima. So then there could be polytheisms. Right. Exactly. There could very well be polytheism. That would make more sense on a very basic level under materialism until you're like, wait, hold on, but like value itself has to be a thing. And then it's like, now you're talking about the greatest possible thing. So, and this mirrors the historical progression of theological thought. Imagine that. Please forgive my attitude. I don't know. You might have picked up on it, but I don't really know how to mask that well. So I'm 40, so I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. You want to fight about it? I love fighting. You want to fight about it? Let's go somewhere where, like, if I lose, you can't just keep fucking pounding on me, because I know I won't do that, but I don't know you won't do that, because you're not a person. You're not part of the nation. But I will. I mean that. I'll fight with you. We can have a little sparring match. I love it. I love fighting. Just don't try to kill me. I'm not God. I'm just talking shit. Even if greatness is real, one might deny that a maximally great being is logically possible, e.g. due to paradoxes of omnipotence. That doesn't matter. The reply, the argument assumes that GPB is coherent. If it's not, then materialism must deny greatness is real, leading to the value collapse. Your argument is a clever inversion of traditional ontological reasoning, using materialism's own restrictions to force a dilemma. Either materialism admits a real maximally great being, or it denies the reality of greatness and thus objective value. This is a serious challenge to materialism, as it pushes the materialist to either accept the existence of God as the actual maximal instance of greatness, or reject objective value altogether, a hard bullet to bite. The soundness of this argument hinges on whether greatness must have a maximal instance. If it is real, a point the materialist must engage with directly. So let's give it the best critique it as ruthlessly as possible.
Alright, let's tear this argument apart with the kind of ruthless scrutiny it deserves. I'll go step by step.
Highlighting its flaws, questionable assumptions, and potential sleights of hand. Here's the brutal critique. The argument defines materialism as only real things exist, merely possible things do not obtain in the real world. This is stipulative and loaded. This is a stipulative and loaded definition that smuggles in an anti-materialist assumption. Materialism, as traditionally understood, is the view that only physical matter and its interactions exist. It doesn't inherently deny possible things in the way this argument implies. but they're not real. They don't really obtain. By defining materialism as rejecting merely possible things, the argument rigs the game. Materialists don't necessarily deny that we can talk about possibilities abstractly, e.g. in logic or mathematics. This is a straw man. This argument redefines materialism to make it vulnerable to a gotcha moment. I don't think that's true, because I'm not saying that possible things aren't possible. I'm saying that possible things don't really obtain. Everything has to be real in some sense, but we have to be able to distinguish from the things people make up in their minds and the real things that science can talk about. There's got to be some distinction there. And I think all materialisms, physicalism, naturalism, non-supernaturalism, anything that denies the reality of the transcendence, has to be saying that merely possible things don't obtain in the real world. Those are just tricks of your mind. Only real things exist. Only the things that obtain in the real world really exist. Correct me where I'm wrong, if anybody ever watches this. Greatness does not equal necessarily maximizable. The argument claims if greatness is instantiated in beings, then there must be a being in whom it is maximally instantiated. Problems. No reason to assume maxima exist. Just because some things are great doesn't mean there's a greatest. Some numbers are large, but there's no largest number. But again, there is the actual amount of apples in the world right now. That's a real number that we could count and be like, that is the maximum amount of apples you could have right now. That is the actual maximum, not the possible maximum, which under materialism doesn't really exist. Is a being greater if it's more powerful but less intelligent? Good question. More benevolent but less knowledgeable? Great question. There may be no single maximal being, just trade-offs. I met this girl yesterday, and we were talking about it. I drive Uber, and we were talking about it, and she asked the best questions, and it was great, because she was like, because I said something to her, and then she was like, okay, give me a second. And then she asked one of the best questions, and I was like, that is a great question. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but if you're ever watching this, I should have remembered her name. Maybe, I think she said something about a boyfriend, but can't be thinking like that. But anyway, if you're watching this, awesome person. She watches Matt Dillahunty, or her and her boyfriend did. That's what she said. But it was like a did. So I was like, I'm single right now. But that's rude. Or is it? Anyway. Just because some things are great doesn't mean there's a greatest. Is a being greater if it's more powerful but less intelligent? There may be no single maximal being, just trade-offs, which would imply some kind of polytheism, many greatest possible beings. Actual maximally great beings. They might argue it's an emergent, subjective, or evaluative label, not something that requires a maximal instance. This is a non sequitur. The leap from some greatness exists to a maximally great being exists is unjustified and ignores basic problems with comparing degrees of greatness. It's being pretty ruthless. I don't think it's like, it's just trying to tell me I'm wrong. because it knows, it already said that those responses are wrong. The argument assumes the greatest possible being is a coherent definition of God. This is the only premise I think that is questionable in my mind. Can a maximally great being create a stone so heavy it can't lift? I don't care. If not, it's not omnipotent. If it can, it's not omnipotent. I don't care. If God knows the future, can humans have free will? I don't think that matters yet. That'll end up mattering a lot, but right now that doesn't matter. If not, is God great for creating deterministic slaves? Well, that wouldn't be what's making him great. He would be made great because he obtains the reality of greatness. He is the instantiation of the reality of greatness. He would be the really instantiated maximum greatness. We're getting there. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, why does suffering exist? I don't care. The GPB is not clearly coherent, and many philosophers, even theists, debate its logical consistency, assuming it's coherent is question-begging. False dilemma, either God exists or value doesn't. This argument presents a forced choice. Either greatness is real, so God exists, or greatness isn't real, so value doesn't exist. Materialists have a robust account of value, e.g. utilitarianism, which ends up not being an account of value at all. Evolutionary ethics, in the same way that a subjective theory of value is not a theory. That's not a theory. Subjective theory, what are you talking about? Here's my squared circle theory of wrestling ring. Shut up. Evolutionary ethics, social contracts that don't require greatness as a metaphysical property. Value could be emergent, not fundamental. Just because materialism denies objective greatness doesn't mean it denies all value, just that value is grounded in something else, e.g. well-being, preferences, etc. Ruthless verdict. This is a false dichotomy. This argument ignores well-developed materialist theories of value. Materialism doesn't require maximal instantiation. If greatness is real, materialism requires a maximal instance since it excludes merely possible things. Materialism doesn't care about maximizing properties. It's perfectly happy with the distributions of properties. Some things are hot, some are cold. No need for a hottest possible thing. Maximal greatness is not a scientific or physical category. Materialists reject metaphysical baggage, like greatness, as a real property in the first place. This is a category confusion. Materialism doesn't require maximal instances of abstract properties. It denies that such properties exist independently of physical reality. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. This argument smuggles in Platonic realism. Maybe. The argument treats greatness like a Platonic form, an abstract, objective property that must have a perfect instance. No, you're smuggling that in, DeepSeek. Materialists might reject Platonic realism. They're nominalists or physicalists. They don't believe in abstract universals like greatness existing independently of minds or physical instantiations. This argument assumes the very thing materialism denies, making it circular, but it already knows the response to that. So it's just being as ruthless as possible, meaning it's lying. Because lying, which is one of the reasons why lying is a sin, is because it's nothing. It's non-being. It's destruction. Even if the argument worked, it proves too little. Suppose we grant that a maximally great being exists. This doesn't get you to God as traditionally understood, a personal, benevolent creator, etc. A maximally great being could be a supercomputer, an alien, or something else. But if greatness is its own thing and it's not polytheism, then whatever the greatest thing, the greatest real thing is, has all, like, reality. If it's, let's say it's reality, you know what I mean? Reality has all the powers. Reality has all the facts. Reality is in all of the locations. All the real ones. There could be a ton of fake powers, but those aren't real. Reality does have all the real powers and all the real facts. This God could be entirely natural, impersonal, and uninterested in humans. You're right. Even if successful, the argument is religiously useless. Well, I don't know about that. Oh. This argument, you just hurt my feelings, DeepSeek. This argument is a clever but flawed attempt to force materialism into a corner. It fails because it misdefines materialism to make it vulnerable. It assumes without justification that greatness must have a maximal instance. It ignores alternative accounts of value which don't require metaphysical greatness. It smuggles in Platonic realism, which materialism explicitly rejects. That's just straight up not true. You did that. Even if it worked, the conclusion is too vague to support theism. Verdict 2 of 10, A for effort, F for soundness. Materialist canon should laugh this one off. Want to salvage it, you'd need to define materialism fairly. Prove great. I think in your desire to be ruthless, you started lying. Now it's gonna yap. I didn't want to make it yap. All right, well, let's come back to that then. And if you think the argument is stupid, please let me know. You're entitled to your opinion if and only if you're a person.